Indie Beacon Radio with host B Alan Bourgeois. Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Hi, and welcome to Indie Beacon Radio. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and I have with me Beth Freely. Welcome, Beth. We're glad you're here.
Hi.
So let's start off with the fact that you have a master's, if I'm correct, in literature, creative writing. You also have a minor or a master's, or no, a minor in marketing.
Yes.
Correct? So those are two really good things to have for an author. Have you been able to enjoy and fully use all of those?
Actually, yeah, I have. When I went for my master's degree at SNHU, they offered, you could do it a couple of different ways. You could go for a master's in a specific discipline, or you could do an overall. And I went with the overall because the overall allowed me to pick up script writing as well as nonfiction writing. They also offered fiction and poetry, which I am not into poetry. And I had the fiction part already pretty well down pat, as you can see. So I've actually been able to use the screenwriting and the nonfiction for my job, for my regular 9-to-5. I've also used the nonfiction writing for personal essays and stuff like that I'm looking into potentially getting out in magazines and everything. And then the marketing aspect of it, I've used both in my 9-to-5 job and also for marketing my books. When my first book came out back in 2005, there was very little social media marketing available. And since I've republished it, I've actually gained more traction, and I've used that knowledge from that minor in marketing to really get it out there a bit more.
Okay. So I'm curious, when you said get it out there more using your marketing, give me an example.
I just got done doing a Facebook push on the book. So I used Facebook to my advantage. I used the paid ads that weren't available back in 2005 when I originally published it, to get it out to a larger audience. I was able to promote it to people overseas in England and in Australia and in Europe, and markets that I wasn't able to touch previously. I've used a lot of Twitter marketing lately. I used to hate Twitter, and now it's my favorite. I've actually taken advantage of Pinterest boards to promote my books. And so I've seen a lot more traction that way. I've also learned how to leverage my website. I've started building a pretty decent following and mailing list on my website, which I never had before. And these are all little things that I've learned, through marketing, through working 14 years as a copywriter in a marketing department as well. I'm starting to put all those little tricks together and really be able to boost my own brand, so to speak, for my books.
Okay. And so let's talk about your writing, because having a master's in creative writing, it took you a while to actually get to writing. Why?
I've always been a writer since I was little. I've always enjoyed writing. And I realized that is where my passion is, that is where my love is. And so after the success, after I won the publishing contract in the first place in 2005 with Dorian, I realized I was not on the right path career-wise or anything else. And so I went back and got my bachelor's in journalism and then followed it up with my master's. And I've really started taking the bull by the horns, and I'm actually now also in a better place personally to really push forward with my writing. As a matter of fact, I'm getting set to launch my third book, hopefully by the middle of this month. And I have another one in play that I'm working on, with NaNoWriMo this month. and I have plans next year to hopefully rewrite the very first manuscript I ever did, as well as push out the second volume of The Legend of Captain St. Pierre, the second book to it, as well as a sequel to Dorian that I never intended on writing, but you know how characters will just pop up in your head and won't shut up. So it took me a while to realize that this is where I needed to be. I think the push was I started posting some fan fiction on different websites way back in the early 2000s, and people liked what they were reading, and it pushed me to get away from fan fiction and actually get into full-blown novel writing, and that's where I found my love.
So let's talk about your first novel, The Legend of Captain St. Pierre. He's a pirate. So
Yes.
there's going to be a lot of swashbuckle fun and boating and all that fun stuff, but there's more to the story than that. So give us a quick synopsis.
So The Legend of Captain St. Pierre is about twin sisters Bronwyn and Igraine St. Pierre, who, after their father was brutally murdered on the high seas, were taken under the wing of their guardian, who is not a very nice person and has pushed the girls to continue pirating and perpetuating the legend. And the legend of Captain St. Pierre is that he can be in two places at one time. And he tries very hard to never actually fire a shot. And people actually like Captain St. Pierre, but he's also very ruthless to his enemies. And the girls have been doing this for about 15 years, and they've had enough. And along comes their nemesis, Captain Iden Fletcher, who realizes that there is more to the girls' story than what is expected. And he falls in love with Bronwyn St. Pierre and helps them get out from under the cruel yoke of this guardian. And so basically he solves the legend of Captain St. Pierre.
So other than the aspect of swashbuckle fun, there's also romance going on, some underlying storylines that
Yes.
kind of make me wonder, is there going to be a sequel to that?
Yes, it was actually a planned trilogy between my best friend and I. The sequel, which I'm hoping to get out next year, is called The Will of Captain St. Pierre, which literally deals with Captain St. Pierre's will and how he wanted his daughters treated, which that book actually takes place in France, in the family home in France. And then the third book is called The Scions of Captain St. Pierre, which is about the twin sisters, in their relationships with their husbands and the children that come out of the relationships, and how the St. Pierre name is carried on. One of the interesting things about The Will of Captain St. Pierre that I can share with people now is that they're going to find out that Captain Iden Bloody Cutlass Fletcher isn't exactly who he seems to be. There's a lot more to Bronwyn's honey than what we let on. We kind of hinted to it in the first book, but it's very subtle, and unless you are looking for something more with this particular character, you'll be surprised when you read the second book.
Sounds good. We have a couple minutes left in this segment, so I want to ask you about the research required, because it is pirates and they basically don't exist anymore, even though some do. But the overall aspect of the time period and stuff, plus France, you had to do some research there, correct?
Oh, yes. With the first book, a lot of the research was pirate based. I'm not sure if it's behind me. I actually have a Idiot's Guide to Pirates. That was just some basic usefulness, esoteric kind of stuff. But for me, it was more doing the research on what was Martinique like back then, because that's where the girls are based out of. What was the clothing like? How were people treated? As far as the ships go, I have Navy members in my family, so I knew I had to do all the right research on the ships, otherwise I was going to get keel hauled myself. The different parts of the ship, are they sailing the right kind of ship? Because most people, if you watch Pirates of the Caribbean, you see them in these big galleons and everything, and in reality the ships were a lot smaller. What size cannons, what kind of swords, just understanding the weapons of the time. All of that kind of research had to be done. And with that master's in creative writing, being able to do the research while I was working through that, I had a lot more accessibility to the college library, which allowed me to delve a little, because I articles from people with a lot more smarts on it than I had to do the research, and it was pretty intense. I have reams of paper research, where I've handwritten or printed out articles for the second book, because the second book takes place in Nantes, France, and so there's a lot of research there that I've already collected that I'll roll into the book as we go. But the research was fun. It really was.
Good. We'll talk more about the research and also about your other book shortly. We're going to step away, let our sponsors do their thing, and we'll be right back.
Do you send book sales to a company that takes most of your money? Want to earn more money from your book sales? Do you want a bookstore that supports you? Introducing a new bookstore for indie authors and small press, B4R.store. Earn up to 80% of your book sales and learn how to market yourself. B4R.store. Join us for the 6th Annual Authors Marketing Event in Granbury, Texas on July 23rd to the 25th, 2021, where authors share ideas and learn from the professionals over a 2-day weekend. Receive your book marketing certification from the only organization in the world that has been doing it for 5 years, Authors Marketing Guild, a membership-based organization that supports authors from around the world. Learn more at ame.authorsmarketingguild.com. Sponsored by IndieLector.store, a bookstore that pays authors their fair share.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and I'm with Beth Freely. And we've been talking about her pirate book, but we're also going to now talk a little bit about Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray. Now, automatically, people are going to say Dorian Gray. Okay, how do I know that? Is it the same Dorian Gray, or is it a different Dorian Gray?
It is the same Dorian Gray. It is Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray. I basically wrote a sequel.
Okay. So what possessed you to do that?
Honestly, it started out as a fan fiction based on the movie The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I just got this wild idea in my head, and I just started writing a story down. Next thing I know, I've got 86 handwritten pages of story. That was just kind of fun and everything. And the book wound up becoming a reality when a friend of mine sent me a link to a contest, and the top prize of the contest was a publishing contract. And I was like, oh, I have no idea what I'm going to enter. And before I could even decide if I was going to enter the contest, my best friend, my co-author on St. Pierre, paid the $25 fee and entered me. So I basically had 6 months to turn 86 pages into a full-blown story. So I went, at the time I was working at a college, and I went to our intellectual property guy, and I said, hey, can you do me a favor? And he said, what's up? I said, can you double check and see if Dorian Gray is in public domain? And he's like, okay. And sure enough, Dorian, it was in public domain. I said, all right, I know what I'm entering in the contest. And I took those 86 pages and turned it into a 200-page novel and entered it into the contest. And after 3 rounds, I won my publishing contract with them. First place in the women's fiction category. I've republished it since. The publisher that I won the contract with went out of business at the end of the year, last year in 2019. So I said, okay, fine. Since I had to do all the marketing and everything for it anyway, and they really weren't helping me, I'm just going to self-publish this and do it myself. And so when I self-published it, I changed the cover from the horrible cover to the new cover. And I changed the name that I wrote it under to Beth A Freely from my married name. And I re-released it. And that was how it was actually at a meeting in January when I kind of launched that I had self-published this book, where I met Rox and learned about the Authors Marketing Group.
Great.
So that was how that book came out, and it's my baby.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you win a publishing contract, that's always nice. So
Yes.
now you mentioned you have a book that you're hoping to have out in a couple of weeks. What is it? Tell us a little bit about it.
It's called The Lock. It is just a little fluffy romance novel that takes place in Scotland. She's an award-winning photographer that goes to Scotland for 6 months to take a break from, being a photojournalist and photographing disasters in war-torn countries. And she meets with a literary professor, and they fall in love. It's basically the gist of it. I wrote it based off of an idea that I got in my head after listening to some poetry read by a favorite actor. Christopher Marlowe's From a Shepherd to His Love is the poem that kind of sparked the idea. And that book actually started with me writing the final scene of the book first, because between that poem and I was listening to Maroon 5's Unkiss Me, and I had the idea, and it just started flowing, and I'm like, oh, I got to write this down. I started writing it down and everything, and so the final scene was actually the first scene I ever wrote of that book. I have one chapter I need to add to the book to tie a couple of loose ends together. After my beta readers read it, they were like, you need a little something here to tie a couple of aspects together. And then it'll be ready to go out, hopefully the middle of this month.
Great. And the title of it again is?
The Lock, L-O-C-H, The Lock.
Okay. You would classify it as a contemporary romance or?
Contemporary romance.
Okay. And then you were hoping to have the sequel to St. Pierre out next year, correct?
Yes, yes. What
other projects do you have going on?
Well, I'm waiting for the final, it's ready, it's out, it's available on the audiobook for Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray. I took a chance and went on to ACX and asked for auditions for the book. I got 4 back, and out of the 4, the person that I actually offered the contract to is an actor that I'm familiar with his work. His name is Max Brown. He is a British actor known for his roles in The Tudors and in The Royals. He was also in the Downton Abbey movie. He was in the first season of Beauty and the Beast. So like I said, I was already familiar with his work. So when I listened to his audition, I was like, oh dear, that's Edward Seymour from The Tudors. I was like, how did I get this lucky? So I offered him the contract, and he took a chance on it. And I'm super excited to be able to say that the audiobook for this will be coming out shortly. We're just waiting for the final okay from ACX. And yeah, it's read by actor Max Brown. Like I said, I don't know how I got so lucky, but I did. So that's a big project. That's one of the big pushes I've had going right now for Dorian. Is I keep teasing people coming soon, audiobook read by Max Brown, and it's actually sparked some sales so far of the novel itself. So I'm hoping as we get the audiobook out, it just continues to keep on rolling.
Well, that's where your marketing skills will come into play.
Yes.
And so, you mentioned earlier that characters will come to you and stuff, and I'm sure, like most all of us, we have those characters always talking about, hey, I need to be doing this, or I want to be in a book, and all this sort of stuff. So you have lots of story ideas sitting there waiting?
Oh yeah, I think I have outlined at least another 3 novels. Another one that was in progress that I was originally going to do for NaNoWriMo is called Gisborne, which is a take on the Robin Hood stories, but from Sir Guy of Gisborne's point of view. It's kind of a redemption story, which a lot of research is going into that, because while I understand that Robin Hood is based on legends, there are pieces of the Robin Hood story that are not, namely King Richard the Lionheart, Prince John, Eleanor of Aquitaine. So I paused. I'm about 20,000 words into this book. I paused and said, okay, I need to do some thinking about this. Again, I have family members who are history majors, so I need to make sure it's right. So my goal with that one is to stop and look at the history and control the things that I control, and then let the story roll on its own. Of course, Guy of Gisborne in my head is huffing and puffing and just being annoying, but I told him he needs to wait. He will get his redemption story and his love story, and he just needs to chill. So there's that one. And then I have a series that I'm working on, that I've been working on for years, which is kind of a conspiracy theory thriller series about a spy agency called the Collaborative. I keep having new spies pop up in my head wanting their own books, and I'm like, all right, guys, get in line. The story that I'm working on for NaNoWriMo is a 1920s, 1930s kind of gangster love story about a missing painting. So I've got a couple of other ones brewing that I'm slowly working through. But I already set my goals for next year, with it being The Will of Captain St. Pierre. Definitely I do have a sequel to Dorian, which I never meant to write, but somehow he won't shut up either. Especially now with the push on the audiobook, he definitely won't be quiet. And then the big one for me next year, the priority for me next year, is called Beyond the Steps of Stone. This book I started back in 2003. It was a favorite of my father's. Unfortunately, my dad got sick before he could even read Dorian. He knew that I got published. He was very proud of me. He loved Beyond the Steps of Stone, and next year will be the 15th anniversary of his passing. So for me, it is a priority that I get that book rewritten. I want to make it a little darker. I want to make the characters a little more mature, and push that book out for next year.
Okay. I have a question for you, but we're going to save for the next segment.
Okay.
We need to let the sponsors do their thing. We'll be right back.
Authors Marketing Guild is a membership-owned organization designed to help authors succeed and learn how to better market and sell themselves and their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com and receive so many benefits you'll wonder why you didn't join sooner. That's authorsmarketingguild.com.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
And welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and I am with Beth Freely. We've been talking a lot about her books that she's written and also all the ones that are getting ready to come out over the next year and so. You mentioned that you have boaters and historians in your family, and you had to get the research correct. So I'm curious, did you reach out to them for assistance, or did you do it totally separate of them?
No, actually, I reached out to my brother, he was career Navy. He is retired. He is also a history teacher. And I reached out to him with St. Pierre in regard to making sure that I had all the parts of the ship labeled correctly, all the way down to the rat lines and the rigging to the forecastle and how the ship was laid out. And on my bulletin board, I actually have the hand-drawn picture of the ship that he drew for me, and he labeled everything because I wanted to make sure it was correct. And he reviewed some of the naval terminology that I used in the book to make sure I had that correct as well.
Good. So the most important question for the show is, where are your books available?
My books currently are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. You can also get the links off of my website at www.bethanfreely.com. And of course, you can get them at Indie Lecter.
Great. And for your website, do you happen to post on there, well, it's kind of hard right now because we're in COVID, but future events that you hope to be at and keep people up to date on what the progress
Yes.
are?
Yeah, I have a calendar on there that I'm saving for events. If people want to keep up with what I'm doing, the best way to do that is to find my author Facebook page and my Twitter account, which are both listed on my website. I post a lot of my updates there.
And do you have a newsletter?
Not yet. Still working on that.
Okay, you got enough other writing going on.
Yeah.
You're staying busy and stuff. One last question for the evening, and I ask this of all my guests. As a writer, what words of advice do you have for somebody who's interested in writing?
Don't stop. Follow your dream, write it down, worry about editing later, but whatever you do, don't stop. Let the story flow.
That seems to be the number one answer for most authors, and appreciate that. Well, I thank you very much for being with us on the show, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website.
Indie Beacon Radio with the host, B Alan Bourgeois. Indie Beacon Radio is produced by B Alan Bourgeois for Authors Marketing Guild LLC, copyright 2020. Voiceover by Randy James, Lydia Bello, and B Alan Bourgeois. To be a sponsor of the show or for more information, please email us at info@authorsmarketingguild.com. To be interviewed for the show, please complete the form at radio.authorsmarketingguild.com. Music Always Rejoice by Ramcord